Maybe you've once loved someone so deeply that you lost yourself in the process. You waited for messages from someone who no longer wanted to hear your voice. Tried to explain yourself to someone who had no intention of understanding. You stepped over your own dignity just to hold on to a love that was already breaking apart. And then one day, not out of anger, not out of pain, you simply went silent. You stopped texting. You stopped waiting. You stopped searching for reasons. Not because you stopped loving, but because you realized, if staying in someone's heart means losing yourself, then that place was never meant for you. This is not a video about how to get her back. There are no tricks, no pickup lines, only the truth, sometimes cold, but powerful enough to bring you back to your rightful place. A man who doesn't need to be chosen, because he has already chosen himself. Each part of this video is a journey, from chasing to stepping back, from holding on to learning to let go, from emotional dependency to inner freedom. And if you're walking this path right now, I just want to say one thing. On the other side of silence is where you'll find your dignity. Stay until the end of this video, not to win anyone back, but to remember who you were before love made you forget. Part 1. True value isn't found in chasing, but in knowing when to stop. Sometimes what finally makes someone see your worth is the moment you choose to walk away from the game. Not because you no longer care, but because you've grown enough to know no one is worth losing yourself for, just to stay in their life. Story of Julian and the Last Cup of Coffee. Julian was a chef in San Francisco, talented, diligent, and humble. He had spent 2 years pursuing a woman named Maya, a sharp, striking architect who always seemed slightly out of reach. Julian wasn't the talkative type, nor was he good at romantic gestures, but he loved through action. Every morning, even though Maya never asked, Julian would wake up early to make her favorite cappuccino, just the right sweetness, never too hot. He would wait for her outside her studio just to catch a 10-minute glimpse of her smile. But time went on and Maya remained vague. She always said, "I'm not ready," but never really let him go. She enjoyed his patient presence like a pleasant habit. Until one Monday morning, Julian placed the cup of coffee on her table for the last time. He said nothing, just smiled, nodded, and walked away as gently as he had arrived. No more check-ins, no more waiting in the rain, no more Julian. Weeks passed. Maya started to feel something missing, not the coffee, but the man who had quietly loved her with everything he had and never asked for anything back. One day she texted, "I miss the Monday morning coffee." Julian read it, but he didn't reply. Not because he was angry, but because he had chosen to love himself the same way he once loved her. Gently, but without surrender. The takeaway. When you stop chasing, it's not because you're indifferent. It's because you've stopped trading your self-worth for someone's attention. And that's when you become truly magnetic. Because when you're no longer always available, you become the one they have to look for. Silence and distance, when rooted in dignity and peace, echo louder than any confession of love. And sometimes your value is only seen once you're no longer there. Part 2. Silence isn't weakness, it's a form of power. Silence is a language. It needs no justification, no explanation. It is the unspoken voice of someone who has been hurt enough to know not everything deserves a response. Story of Marcus and the first time he didn't reply. Marcus was a physical therapist in Philadelphia. He had been in a deep relationship with Lana, a young writer, intelligent and intense in her emotions. She loved with passion, but challenged him with suspicion. Jealousy without reason, disappearances without warning. It became a pattern in their relationship. Marcus, always calm, was the one who held things together. He wasn't great with words, but he excelled at enduring. So much so that he didn't even realize how long he'd been sacrificing his peace for a love that didn't have a name. Then, one night, after a meaningless fight, sparked by Lana feeling unimportant, she sent a text. "Maybe we need to take a break so you can realize how much I matter." For the first time, Marcus didn't reply. No anger, no calls, no attempts to win her back. 3 days passed, then a week, then 2. Lana grew unsettled. She waited for a voice message, an explanation, some proof that he still cared. But Marcus wasn't silent to punish her. He was silent because, for the first time in his life, he chose to protect his own heart instead of justifying why it kept breaking. Reflection. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. Because when you go quiet, it's not that you have no words left, it's that you've walked far enough to realize your value isn't proven by who you can hold on to, but by the fact that you no longer need to. A mature man's silence is not withdrawal. It's a quiet declaration that says, "I don't need to control anyone. I just need to protect my peace." And the man who knows when to be silent has already learned the most powerful lesson of love. It's not about chasing, it's about standing firm. Part 3. When you stop reacting, you become the one they think about. In love, people often don't miss you when you're always around. They miss you when you disappear, with intention. When you no longer reply instantly, no longer orbit around someone else's emotions, no longer react every time they test you. You don't become cold. You become mysterious, and mystery is magnetic. Story of Eric and the exit without announcement. Eric was an independent filmmaker based in Santa Fe. He had once dated Zoe, a woman admired in the art scene for her beauty, sharpness, and undeniable charm. Zoe was used to attention, used to getting good morning texts, compliments on every post, people checking in on her constantly. For a while, Eric was the nice guy in her orbit. He adjusted his schedule to suit her moods. He made time, asked how she felt, and apologized even when he didn't understand why she was upset. Until one day, Eric realized he was slowly vanishing inside himself. He didn't blame Zoe. She lived the way she knew how, but he had reached the limits of his dignity. So, with no warning, Eric left the loop. No messages, no likes, no explanations. Instead, he went to Montana, worked on a nature documentary, and spent his mornings surrounded by pine trees, speaking only to himself. Zoe didn't notice at first, but days passed. No texts, no reactions, no good morning from the man who used to care. She posted stories, no views. She sent a random message, no reply. And for the first time she asked herself, has he really gone? Reflection. You don't need to act mysterious to be attractive. You just need to stop at the right moment and let your silence speak for you. In a world where everyone's performing, the one who chooses not to stands out. A man who stops reacting isn't heartless. He's simply unwilling to be pulled by unstable emotions anymore. He responds with action, not words, with quiet, not conflict, with living, not proving. And a man like that leaves a space that's hard to fill. Part 4. When you stop reacting, you become the man who cannot be shaken. There's something women do, sometimes unconsciously. They test the limits of your emotions. Not to hurt you, but to see who you are when things aren't going smoothly. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for someone who doesn't get pulled under by the unpredictable waves inside them. And when you don't react, not with jealousy, not with drama, not with desperation, you're not just staying calm. You're showing you're a steady shoulder to lean on, not a fragile soul ready to break. Story of Adrian and the art of staying unmoved. Adrian was a psychologist in Minneapolis, someone who had spent most of his life helping others navigate emotional chaos. But when it came to his own love life, he used to be easily swept away. His ex-girlfriend, Clara, was a passionate musician. and just as volatile as the melodies she played. Clara loved Adrian, but often challenged him with playful yet cutting remarks like, "You should probably find someone more exciting. I'm not really the one you need." In the past, Adrian would rush to reassure her, try to prove her wrong, and do everything to keep her from leaving. But after years of studying human emotion, Adrian finally turned inward. And the next time Clara repeated her familiar line, he simply looked at her. No resentment, no defiance, and said, "Maybe you're right." Clara froze. She wasn't used to losing her power. He wasn't angry. He didn't walk away. He simply didn't react. And in that moment, he stopped being the man who got pulled by someone else's tide and became the man who set the tone by his stillness. Reflection. Attraction doesn't come from blowing up to show you care. It comes from the peace you keep when someone tries to take it away. When you no longer jump at every emotional trigger, you're not detached, you're deep. When you don't rush to counter every provocation, you're not weak, you've chosen wisdom. And when you choose grounded strength over winning an argument, you haven't lost. You've matured. Not reacting isn't surrender. It's the power of someone who knows his worth and doesn't need anyone to confirm it. A man who cannot be shaken is the one she never forgets. Part 5. Being irreplaceable doesn't come from pursuit, but from building yourself. There's a truth many men avoid. You cannot make someone love you deeply if you've abandoned yourself in the process. Real attraction doesn't come from promises, good morning texts, or candlelit dinners. It comes from the depth of a man who knows what he's living for and lives for it, whether someone stays or walks away. Story of Thomas, the man of new habits. Thomas was a civil engineer in Denver. He had once loved a woman named Lila, someone in the arts, full of energy and emotionally driven. She used to say, "I like dreamers, as long as they're gentle." Thomas loved her so much that he lost himself trying to become her ideal man, trying to appear more creative, more sensitive, more open to things that never truly resonated with him. Then Lila left. Not because he did something wrong, but because he was no longer himself. After the breakup, Thomas didn't chase her. He didn't try to prove he could change one more time. Instead, he started over, with the smallest things. Waking up early to run, learning to play the guitar, signing up for cooking classes, spending weekends hiking the Colorado trails he once promised he'd explore, but never had time for because he was busy loving. Gradually, his life was no longer a set of empty spaces waiting to be filled. It became a journey with purpose, a life that made him excited to wake up, even without someone texting him good morning. A year later, he ran into Lila at an art event. She paused, quietly stunned, as she saw him talking confidently with new friends, healthy, grounded, alive. After the event, she messaged him, "You've changed. You look alive." Thomas simply replied, "It's not change, really. It's just the first time I stopped letting someone else write the script of my life." Reflection. You don't become irreplaceable because you're better than others. You become irreplaceable because you live in a way no one else can imitate. When you invest in yourself, you take energy away from meaningless pursuits and put it into becoming the man you were always meant to be. And from the moment you stop trying to hold on to someone, you start becoming the one they don't want to let go of. A man who is whole doesn't need to be filled. And that's exactly why no one else can fill his place. Part 6. True strength is when you no longer depend on having someone. People often ask, "How do I get her back?" But the better question is, how do I stop living in the obsession of needing someone to feel whole? A man who hasn't learned how to stand tall in solitude is a man easily controlled by someone's presence or absence. Inner strength doesn't come from how many people love you. It comes from this. If everyone walks away, you still don't abandon yourself. Story of Noah, the man who returned to himself. Noah was a financial analyst in Chicago. Smart, respectful, professionally successful, he was the definition of a good man. He had a deep relationship with Eliza, a literature teacher, gentle and introspective. But Eliza left, not because Noah wasn't good, but because she needed to find herself. A vague reason that left a very real void inside him. Noah broke down. He reached out, wrote heartfelt letters, consulted therapists. Once, he even drove through the night just to see her for a few minutes. Until one freezing morning, Noah looked in the mirror. Sunken eyes, sleepless nights, a heart beating in fear, not in love. And he let go, not of Eliza, but of the version of himself that had become weak, dependent, and directionless. Noah took a leave from work, shut off his social media, enrolled in a mountain trekking course in Wyoming, not to escape, but to re-enter the world from the inside out. There, surrounded by nature and silence, he rewrote his own rules. Love is not for filling a void, it's for growing together. And if someone leaves, I still owe myself a life worth living. Reflection. When you stop asking, when will she come back? And start asking, how long have I been abandoning myself? You've stepped into the threshold of freedom. That freedom is not loud, but it is profound. It makes you the kind of man who no longer seeks external approval, who no longer gets dragged by emotion, but takes the wheel of his own life, even in the storm. You don't have to be cold to be strong. You just have to stop letting others define your joy. A man like that is not intimidating, but he's unforgettable. Because he doesn't need anyone to return in order to find his power. He's already found it, in silence, where he stopped waiting for messages and started writing his own story. Part 7. When you become unpredictable, you turn into a mystery that can't be ignored. In an era where every move is announced, digital silence becomes a quiet but powerful statement. You don't need to block anyone. You don't need to post a "I'm fine" status. You just need to disappear, deliberately. And that alone is enough to make someone who once took you for granted start to feel uneasy. The story of Miles, the man who went quiet like a winter breeze. Miles was a UX designer living in Austin. He once dated Camille, a content creator who practically lived her life online. For her, every moment had to be captured, every emotion shared, and every relationship at least somewhat public. At first, Miles tried to keep up. He liked her stories, left subtle comments, maintained a faint thread of connection like an unspoken habit. But one day, when the relationship grew dull, no longer love, not yet gone, Miles didn't argue, didn't sulk, didn't post a cryptic caption. He just quietly stepped out of her life. No more online activity. His name vanished from story views. No more traces. He switched to private. No new pictures, no poetic quotes. Nothing except emptiness. Weeks passed. Camille began to wonder, is he still watching me? What's he thinking? Or have I really lost him? No answers, just absence. And that absence, from a man who had once been quietly present, made her start missing not a specific face, but a feeling. The sense of being seen without needing to be told. Reflection. When you no longer feel the need to appear to be remembered, you enter the realm of the irreplaceable. You're not cold. You've simply stopped trying. And in a world where everyone's trying to impress, the one who chooses to withdraw at the right time leaves the deepest impression. Because constant presence makes people numb, but sudden absence with depth makes them think. You don't need to play mind games. You just need the strength not to react. No need to prove anything. No need to send a message. And except for one simple truth. I've chosen my own life, and I'm living it, without needing you to know. From that moment on, You're no longer the man waiting for her to change her mind. You're the man she can't stop thinking about, because she's no longer sure if she even has a way back. Part 8. The man who leaves no gaps is the man who can't be replaced. Some men leave and create emptiness, but others leave no gap behind, because they never lived in a way that needed to be filled by anyone else. They don't live for sympathy after being left. They live to become whole, so whole that no one can take anything away from them again. The story of Sebastian, the man who didn't need anyone to feel complete. Sebastian used to be an aerospace engineer in Houston, a high-pressure but stable job. He loved Audrey, a confident, successful attorney. Their 3-year relationship had its highs and lows, but always revolved around one thing. Sebastian was the one who kept adjusting. He adjusted his emotions to fit Audrey's packed schedule, adjusted his needs so she wouldn't feel suffocated. Eventually, he even adjusted his dreams, just to hold on to someone who no longer saw him as a priority. When they broke up, there was no drama, just a silence that stretched. Sebastian didn't look for someone new, didn't drink himself numb, didn't post cryptic reflections. He returned to what he had once abandoned. His dream of designing drones for sustainable agriculture, an idea he had shelved for the sake of a stable job. He quit, used his savings to open a small workshop on the outskirts of Austin, woke at 5 a.m., exercised, built prototypes. At night, he read, cooked, played piano, and occasionally wrote thoughts in a journal no one else would ever read. A year later, Audrey stumbled upon a video of him presenting a drone prototype to help farmers in rural areas. She couldn't look away, not because he was successful, but because he was alive. A man she once thought she could control, now radiated an energy she couldn't even touch. Reflection. When you build a life that is whole, you don't need validation. You don't need to be remembered, because your presence carries its own gravity. You don't need to disappear to make someone regret. You just need to live in a way that makes people ask, why did I ever underestimate a man who lives like this? A strong man is not the one women chase. He is the one women can't replace, because he never allowed himself to become someone who needed replacing. You don't need to hurt anyone. You just need to live a life that can't be manipulated and can't be ignored. Part 9. The man who never comes back is the one who's never forgotten. It's not the man who leaves loudly who leaves the deepest wound. It's the one who walks away in silence and never returns. Some men don't disappear to be remembered. They disappear because they know if they stay, they'll lose themselves. And that quiet departure, no blame, no bitterness, no drama, becomes a new kind of presence. A scar that makes no sound but echoes forever. The story of Elijah, and the last time he walked away, Elijah was an ER doctor in Seattle, someone who faced life and death daily, but didn't expect to be drained by a toxic relationship. He loved Mia, a free-spirited, passionate, emotional artist. Charming, talented, unstable. Every week was a game. Break up, then make up. Test him, then forgive him. Disappear, then ask him to prove his love. Elijah had done it all. Written love letters, waited for hours, tried to be gentle even when he was hurting, until one rainy night, Mia texted, "I think we need a break. You just don't excite me anymore." Elijah didn't get angry. He looked out the window, watched the rain on the glass, and turned off his phone. No response. No questions. No waiting for one more try. The next day, Mia heard nothing. No messages. No reactions. No trace on social media. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months passed. Elijah disappeared as if he'd never existed. But the truth was he was still there, just no longer hers. That winter, Mia came across a TEDx video of Elijah, speaking about men's mental health and emotional trauma. He stood tall, calm, speaking with the quiet strength of a man who had once been broken and healed himself. She stared, opened her phone, read their old texts, and for the first time she understood. There are men who, once they walk away, are gone forever. Reflection. The man who knows how to withdraw, without chaos, without needing to be understood, without needing to be missed, is the one who leaves others restless for life. Not because he intended to hurt, but because he was too silent to be forgotten. You don't need to do something grand to be remembered. You just need to leave with dignity and live a life no one else could ever replace. Not every woman regrets being left, but they are haunted by the man who left no door open for return. Because finality isn't cruelty, it's ultimate loyalty to yourself. Part 10. True power isn't making someone regret you. It's not needing their approval to feel whole. The world often tells men, if she comes back, if she regrets it, if she begs, then you've won. But the truth is, if you're still hoping for that to happen, you're not free yet. Freedom isn't being loved again. Freedom is when you no longer need that love to feel your worth. The story of Rowan, the man who didn't need anyone to know he was enough. Rowan was a playwright living in solitude in the mountains of Oregon. He once deeply loved a woman named Leah, a captivating, successful actress. But Leah always felt he wasn't shiny enough, not successful enough to walk beside her on the red carpet of life. Rowan tried writing more engaging plays, tried networking more, tried becoming the version of himself that Leah could proudly hold hands with in public. But the more he tried, the more he drifted from himself. When Leah left, he didn't beg, didn't plead. He simply returned to his cabin, brewed tea, opened a journal and wrote, for the first time in years, not to be noticed, but simply to be himself. Years later, one of his plays made it to a national stage. Leah attended. She sat in the third row, silently watching the spotlight shine on the name she once thought wasn't enough. She didn't cry. She didn't text. She just sat there, hands clenched, and knew that Rowan no longer needed her to become who he truly was. Final insight. Power doesn't lie in making someone feel regret. It lies in living a life that needs no one's approval and yet remains complete. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to live deep enough, true enough, strong enough, that when someone remembers you, it's not because of what you said, but because you stayed silent with such dignity. A strong man doesn't walk away with thunder. He simply walks in the right direction, quietly, steadily, deeply, until his absence becomes a silent echo in someone's mind for a very long time. A closing message, just for you, the one reading. These final lines. Don't change so someone will keep you. Change so you no longer need to be kept, because once you start living fully, not out of revenge, not for validation, not to be seen, but simply to be worthy in your own eyes, then you'll no longer ask, will she come back? You'll quietly ask, today did I live as the man I always dreamed of becoming?